Ropes cut into her wrists as they yank her forward, the fibers already dark with blood. The dust of the street rose around her bare feet, clinging to her skin, choking her breath. The morning sun had only just split the horizon, burning red across the sky, and already the town had gathered like vultures. Laughter, low and cruel, rolled from the steps of the saloon. A bottle smashed against a post near her head, glass raining down, sharp and cold. She did not flinch. She could not afford to. The platform waited ahead, 2 planks nailed together on barrels. Tilting unevenly in the dirt, a man with a curled mustache and a ledger book stood beside it, shouting for order. His voice cracked against the restless crowd, but they hushed only when the sheriff stepped forward. He wore no badge today, only a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, his silence more dangerous than any gun at his side. "Bring her up," someone called. The rope jerked again, and she stumbled onto the platform. Her braid swung forward, hiding part of her face, strands loose and wild from the struggle. Men leaned in, eyes sharp with hunger, coins already clinking in their hands. A boy no older than 12 tried to peek between shoulders, but his mother dragged him back, covering his eyes. The Comanche woman's chest heaved. She opened her mouth, and for a moment nothing came, only the dry rasp of dust in her throat. Then, clear and strong, she forced the words out. "I can cook." A ripple of amusement. Boots shuffled. Spurs jingled. "I can sew," she pressed on, her voice rising against their jeers. "I can clean. I'll be anything you want." Mocking laughter split the air. One rancher spat tobacco into the dirt. Another elbowed his friend and shouted, "I want her to shovel manure." The crowd roared. Still she held herself upright, shoulders trembling but defiant. Her eyes, dark and unbroken, swept across them, searching, pleading, daring. The auctioneer slammed his ledger shut. "Enough of that. We'll start the bidding at $20. Hands shot up, quick and greedy. Voices overlapped, shouts colliding in the dry morning air. 25, 30, 35. The Comanche woman's gaze darted over the faces, her breath shallow. No kindness, no mercy, only firelight in her eyes. And then, from the edge of the crowd, a figure moved. She had been standing apart, half shadowed by the awning of the blacksmith's shop. A woman, tall, wrapped in black, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. Her hands rested calmly at her sides, one gloved, the other bare, scarred from work. She had spoken to no one. She had watched every second, silent as stone. Now, her boots struck the dirt as she stepped forward. The crowd shifted uneasy, as though a chill had passed them despite the climbing sun. Men glanced at each other, smirking, whispering. What's she doing here? The bidding slowed. 45, one man tried. No answer. The black-clad woman moved closer, her eyes fixed not on the auctioneer, not on the sheriff, but on the bound Comanche woman standing on that crooked platform. The Comanche felt it. She stiffened, lips parting, the rope pulling tight as she turned her head. For the first time since dawn broke, her heart stuttered with something that was not fear. The auctioneer cleared his throat. 45, do I hear 50? 50. I'll take her. The words cut the air like a whip. The crowd went still. Even the horses tied to the post seemed to pause, ears flicking. The woman in black stood only a few paces from the platform now. Her voice carried without shouting, firm and unyielding, as though she had been waiting for this exact moment. The auctioneer blinked, his ledger hovering midair. "Ma'am, this ain't. I said I'll take her." Gasps rippled through the townsfolk. Some laughed in disbelief. Others spat curses, muttering about madness, about witches and widows. The sheriff finally lifted his head, his eyes narrowed beneath the brim of his hat. He did not speak. He simply watched. The Comanche woman's knees threatened to buckle. Her throat burned, her lips trembled, but she forced herself to stay upright. She looked at the woman in black, and for the first time, her plea faltered on her tongue. The auctioneer scratched his mustache nervously. "Name your price, then." The woman in black reached inside her coat. Silence thickened, tense as a gunfight. When her hand emerged, it held not a pistol, but a leather pouch heavy with coins. She dropped it onto the platform, the sound sharp as a shot. Paid in full. The crowd erupted, shouts of protest. disbelief, rage. She can't. That's not legal. She's stealing from us. The sheriff's hand twitched near his holster, but he did not draw. He only stepped back, his boots sinking into the dust. His silence gave weight to the woman's claim. The auctioneer licked his lips, glanced at the sheriff, then at the pouch of coins, then at the woman in black. His voice wavered. Sold. The word hung heavy in the morning heat. The Comanche woman's breath came sharp, ragged. Her body trembled, not from weakness but from the shattering of certainty. She had been ready to beg until her voice broke, ready to be dragged to another cage. Now, her eyes locked with the stranger's, and she could not look away. The ropes were cut. Fibers fell into the dirt. Blood rushed back into her wrists, searing, alive. The woman in black did not touch her. She only turned, stepping off the platform, her coat swaying in the rising wind. She paused, looked back once, and spoke low, almost like an order but not unkind. Come. The Comanche woman hesitated. The crowd parted grudgingly, spitting curses, throwing stones that struck the dirt at her feet. But the sheriff did nothing. The auctioneer said nothing. The townsfolk, for all their rage, did nothing. She stepped down one foot, then the other, and followed the woman in black into the dust and the fire of the rising sun. Behind them, the crowd boiled with hate. Ahead, the desert waited, wide and unforgiving. The morning bells rang from the church tower, hollow and cracked, and the tale began. The wagon creaked under the weight of silence. Wheels cracked through dry ruts. Boards rattled with each stone struck. The horse's flanks steamed in the heat, its ears flicking back at every strained command. The Comanche woman sat on the flatbed, wrists raw, rope burn swollen. She kept her back straight, chin high, though the sun pressed hard against her. Every jolt sent pain up her arms, but she gave no sound. At the reins sat the woman in black. Her jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the shimmering road ahead. She hadn't spoken since they left the town. Only the creak of leather and the steady slap of reins broke the air between them. A vulture circled overhead. The ranch appeared slowly, a skeleton of wood and shadow against the desert. The windmill leaned like a drunk, its blades turning slow and broken. A barn sagged, one wall caved in. The house stood solitary, shutters clapping in the hot wind. No smoke rose from the chimney. The wagon halted. Dust rolled forward, curling around their boots. The widow dropped lightly to the ground, skirts catching the grit. She didn't offer a hand. The Comanche slid down on her own. Her legs nearly buckled, but she steadied herself, pressing heels into the dirt. Her eyes scanned the ranch, sharp, untrusting. No escape here, only fences stretching into emptiness. Inside, the widow said, her voice low, even. The door groaned open. The house smelled of dust and wood oil, with a faint echo of something long gone, bread maybe, or smoke. A table stood at the center, scarred by years of knives and plates. A single chair sat pushed back, as if someone had risen and never returned. The Comanche did not move further. She stood in the doorway, shoulders rigid. The widow set a tin cup on the table. Water sloshed inside. Drink. Slowly, warily, the Comanche stepped forward, her fingers curling around the cup. She lifted it, watching the widow's every twitch. The water burned cold down her throat, but she drank it all. When she set it down, the silence returned, heavier than before. Outside, the wind picked up. The shutters slammed. The roof timbers groaned. The widow moved to the hearth, knelt, struck flint. Sparks caught dry kindling. Fire rose, thin and trembling. She fed it slowly, her face lit in flashes, sharp cheekbones, shadows under her eyes. The Comanche's gaze shifted to the mantel. A rifle leaned there, oiled but unused. Beside it, a hat, wide-brimmed, dust settling over it like years of silence. She did not ask. She did not need to. The widow's hand paused on the wood. Her back stiffened, but she said nothing. Night came fast, spilling across the land like ink. Coyotes yipped from the ridges. The horse in the corral snorted, hooves restless. The Comanche lay on a pallet by the wall, staring at the ceiling beams, listening. The fire cracked, sending shadows across the floor. She thought the crowd's laughter, the ropes biting her wrists. She thought of the woman in black, saying one word, "Come." A dog barked, sudden and sharp. Both women sat up. The widow rose first, moving to the door, rifle in hand. She opened into the dark, the corral still, wind sweeping the dry grass. Nothing moved but shadows. Then she saw it. The barn door, carved deep, fresh, raw in the wood. The letters cut jagged. "Give her back." The widow's grip tightened on the rifle. Her shoulders squared, but her face betrayed nothing. She turned, closing the door behind her, the words still burning in her mind. The Comanche had risen, eyes locked on her. She had not asked, but she knew. Neither spoke. The fire hissed low. Outside, the wind howled across the empty land, dragging dust against the shutters like nails. And in the silence, the burden settled heavy between them. A shot split the night. The window shattered. Glass sprang across the table. The Comanche dropped flat, heart hammering. The widow was already moving, rifle up, face cut sharp by firelight. She crouched low, peering into the dark beyond the broken pane. Hoofbeats thundered once, then vanished into silence. The fire crackled, smoke curling. The smell of gunpowder lingered sharp in the air. The Comanche rose slowly, fists clenched. Her eyes met the widow's. No words. Both knew what it meant. They were being hunted. By morning the evidence was plain. Fences slashed, rails scattered like bones. The well water stank bitter, slick with oil. The horse in the corral trembled, foam flecking its mouth. Someone had left poison grain in the trough. The widow knelt, touching the dirt, studying the boot prints pressed deep. More than one man. Riders. Their stride showed confidence, carelessness. They weren't afraid. She stood, jaw tightening. They'll be back. The Comanche's hands curled into her skirt. Then we wait. Not as captives. Not as prey. The day turned heavy with work. The widow hauled spare planks to the windows, hammering until her palms bled. The Comanche gathered herbs on the edge of the land, bitter-smelling roots tucked into cloth, salves ground with stone. They worked in silence, only the wind filling the space between them. At the barn, the widow's voice cut through the stillness. "You ever fire a rifle?" The Comanche's eyes flashed dark and steady. "I've loosed arrows enough." The widow handed her the rifle. The weight settled into the Comanche's arms. Awkward at first, foreign. She lifted, braced, squinted down the barrel. The desert wavered in heat before her. "Breathe," the widow murmured. "Don't fight it. Let it settle." A crack split the silence. The can perched on the fence post toppled, clattering into the dust. The Comanche's lips parted just slightly. The widow nodded once, approval hidden but real. When dusk fell, they did not light the fire. Shadows pulled across the ranch. Coyotes wailed from the ridges. Somewhere in the desert, voices carried, low, muffled laughter, the jangle of tack. The Comanche crouched at the threshold, herbs ground into a paste, smearing them along the blade of a knife. The widow sat at the table, pistol laid out before her, oilcloth in hand. She ran it over the barrel slow, patient like a ritual. The night deepened. Stars burned hard and cold. A whisper of movement stirred near the corral. The dog bristled, teeth bared, a growl rumbling deep. The women froze, weapons ready. A shadow moved against the sky. Another followed. Then 3. Then more. Torches flickered alive, red sparks against the black. The Comanche's breath hitched. The widow rose, silent as a blade being drawn. She crossed to the door, rifle in hand, and opened it just enough to see. Riders. A line of them stretching across the ridge, their silhouettes burning against the fire they carried. The desert lit orange beneath their torches. The Comanche joined her, eyes narrowed, jaw hard. For the first time since the ropes had been cut, she did not look beaten. She looked ready. The widow lowered the rifle, shut the door, and spoke. Her voice was steady, stripped of all fear. "They're coming!" The Comanche's reply was a whisper, fierce and certain. "Then let them." Outside, the torches snaked down the ridge, fire dripping into the desert night. The first rider went down hard, his torch tumbling into the sand. flames licking at the dry brush. Horses screamed, hooves thundered, dust rose thick and choking. From the porch, the widow fired again, smooth, calm, each shot a death sentence. Her black coat snapped in the wind, her hat shadowing eyes sharp as iron. She didn't miss. She never missed. The Comanche moved beside her, knife glinting in the firelight, hair wild across her face. She darted low, cut her rope loose, and a panic horse bucked free, kicking her rider into the dirt. She seized his dropped pistol without hesitation. More men charged, their shouts carrying through the heat. Bullets tore into the walls of the house, with splintering, glass shattering. The dog barked furiously, lunging at the door. The widow's rifle clicked empty. She tossed aside, drew a revolver, and stepped forward into the open. God Almighty! She's still alive. One of the riders gasped, recognition flashing in his eyes. The widow's face was stone. She leveled the pistol. Crack. The man folded in the saddle and slid down like a sack of grain. Fear rippled through the others. They had heard the stories. A crack shot, a ghost in black, thought buried with her husband years ago. But here she stood, alive, deadly as ever. The Comanche fired the stolen pistol, her arm steady. The bullet grazed one rider's arm, spinning him sideways. She didn't flinch. She didn't beg. She fought. The sheriff spurred forward, torch in hand, face twisted with rage. Burn it! Burn them both! Torches flew. Flames caught the dry barn, spreading fast, black smoke curling against a rising sun. The widow dropped one man, then another, moving through the smoke like shadow. Each shot rang sharp, final. Her hands were steady, her breath unbroken. The Comanche sprinted toward the corral, ducking fire, grabbing a rope. She swung it with deadly precision, catching a rider's arm and yanking him down. He hit the ground hard, and she was on him in a heartbeat, blade flashing. Dust flew. The man screamed once, then nothing. The sheriff dismounted, boots pounding, revolver drawn. He fired, the bullet striking the porch beam inches from the widow's head. She turned slow, her eyes locking on him. Silence stretched in the heat. The world narrowed to two figures in the dust. The sheriff sneered, thumb cocking back the hammer. Should have stayed dead, widow. Her pistol rose, steady as the sun. The draw was fast, too fast for the crowd, for the world to see clearly. Two shots cracked together, echoes rolling against the canyon walls. Dust swallowed the moment. When it cleared, the sheriff lay sprawled in the dirt, his hat fallen, blood seeping into the earth. The widow still stood, smoke curling from her barrel. The last riders broke. They wheeled their horses, spurred hard, fleeing into the desert with the sunrise at their backs. Only the crackle of burning wood remained. The barn roared with flames, beams collapsing in showers of sparks. The Comanche stood at its edge, chest heaving, blade slick, eyes blazing. She looked at the widow, not with pleading now, but with fire, with the unspoken bond of two who had bled together. The widow lowered her pistol. For the first time, her shoulders sagged, not in defeat, but release. The dog padded forward, pressing against her leg. The Comanche stepped closer, standing beside her in the smoke and ruin. Neither spoke. Words were too small for what bound them now. The fire climbed higher, but they did not flinch. Together, they turned toward the open desert, where the sun rose fierce and blinding. And somewhere in the hush that followed, the voice of the storyteller lingered, soft as wind through canyon stone. They say 2 women once stood when no one else would, one bound by chains, the other by sorrow. And beneath the burning sun, they carved their freedom in fire and lead. Their names may fade, but the desert remembers.